Yast review with Bruce Krakowski, or Bruce. We'll just call him Bruce K, because he wants to remain anonymous. I'm going to put a little sunglasses on him later and a little mustache. And if we're going to start our first competition today, since Bruce and I were just talking about this, if someone could tell us what Yast is, we'll throw your guy's name in a bucket. I'll pull a name and we'll send you something special. So what I want to do is, because I want to give people that watch this, I want to give them a reason on why Bruce and I are doing this. And, you know, I want to start a channel by like saying what it is that made us both want to do this channel. And we're going to go through again, how many episodes are there?
9 episodes.
No, how many episodes are there in the full 3 seasons of Star Trek?
79 or so.
Oh, 59.
79.
79.
Yeah, about 79 episodes.
When I edit this, my mouth is going to say 59, but it's going to say 79.
That's awesome.
So, but Bruce is a very important part of this. I'm kind of just here incidentally, but I wanted Bruce here because Bruce is like, he was my introduction to Star Trek, and I just have always felt that Star Trek was very important to Bruce. I mean, his adolescence, his growing up, and then when I met him, he was really into Star Trek. No, he was. You were really into it when I met you, and so so I want him to kind of go through his history with Star Trek, what got him so interested in it, and how he got to it. And I'll let Bruce talk for a while, and then I'll say how I got interested in it and why I decided, hey, let's do this thing. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Bruce.
Well, thanks for asking me to do this. I have some Star Trek friends, but this, and we just talked superficially about some stuff. This is very interesting. I learned about Star Trek in the early 70s, but my first recollection was my father and we watched an episode or part of an episode. And that particular memory is important to me, that flash of seeing an episode, because I want to consider myself a first generation Trekkie for whatever reason, as if that's some badge of honor. That just means I'm old. But hey, first generation Trekkie, I saw the original show when it was on the air.
And when was that?
That would have been around 66 when the series aired. The episode I saw or remember was Who Mourns for Adonais.
Cool. And that was really special because you watched it with your dad.
Yeah.
Right. So you were just a little bit, pretty young. I mean, I don't know, 66, you were 5 years old or so.
5 years old, and that's all I remember. That little brief memory of a scene on the TV. That's it. Not the whole episode or any other episodes. That's it. That's all I remember. And then later on, I learned about it in the early 70s by reading books.
But you were saying something about your mother not letting you watch Star Trek when you were young.
In our household, it was go to bed early, and my mother was not too keen on Star Trek, science fiction. I can't say that, TV and stuff. So there was never Star Trek was never on in the 60s for me. Yeah, in the family. Yeah.
So she was more like, she just wanted you to go to bed early, and she wasn't really a TV kind of mother.
Yeah, right. None of those toys and none of that TV, and so that kind of stood out, that we actually saw that episode, and my mother was probably not there at the time, right?
Right.
I chose my shopping. Yeah.
So that was your introduction. You were a young boy, and then you somehow graduated into more things. So how did that happen?
One day in 7th grade, I was junior high school, and someone walked in the library, across the library. I hung out in the library like all geeks, and with a book, and the book was The Making of Star Trek. That was, I think, Whitfield wrote it for Gene Roddenberry, and it was called The Making of Star Trek. And I saw that title, and at 12 years old or 13 or something, I didn't know what that meant. The making of sounded so foreign, so weird. I must have known about Star Trek. It looked intriguing. I went to the bookstore, and I think, memory serves, ordered it sight unseen. And then, oh my God, there's blueprints in there. There were some pictures. And then Francio's of Designs, didn't he do the blueprints? And the blueprints and the technical manual came out. That was it. I love the ship. I think the ship got me in. The ship is a character for me. I love those episodes where they are only on the ship.
Now, had you watched more Star Trek before you got the book, or did the book kind of take you back into watching Star Trek?
It started into, hey, this is interesting. They actually made a show, and they're explaining in this book how they made a show. And then I started watching the show and trying to record it. Back then we had audio tape. This was pre-Betamax. And books and blueprints and the show on TV. You had to be there. There was no record. You had to be there when it was on.
That's right. With commercials and all.
Exactly.
So how did you record these shows?
My grandmother had some reel-to-reel tape decks, and I had both of hers, and I would record and edit them on audio tape.
So there was all audio. There was no video that you were doing at first.
Exactly. School had some video tape recorders, VTRs, but at home it was audio tape. And and the show was always on at 6. The joke around my house was that it's 10 minutes after 6, Bruce. And you see, if I started recording if it was 10 minutes after 6, I was so depressed. I wouldn't record any of it because I missed the beginning. I'd have to wait because they stripped it and they ran it every day or whatever. I'd have to wait until it kind of came around again. So it was always, the joke was any time of day, or they would say, it's 10 minutes after 6, Bruce. That goes to this day. It's very, very funny. We all laugh. We all know what it is. Bruce didn't get to the recording on time. Went in front of the little TV and pushed the little record button. Yeah.
So how many did you record on audio before you went over to video recording? Or did you record any on video at all?
I recorded Next Gen on video. I recorded only the original on audio, and all of them, and I still have the 5-inch reels to this day, all labeled on the back when they start, what counter it starts and ends on, and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And then when VHS came out, I think that for me that was 77, 78 or something. I had a friend who was in a video store, and I bought them as they sold them. I think they sold them in blocks of 10 or something.
No.
It wasn't like seasons. I gotta have a poster that says from the store that says how they were sold. So then the VHS tapes, and then when Laserdisc came out, I was just floored. It was like, yes, heaven! I can see the individual hairs on their head.
When did videotape? Blu-ray or DVD? Laserdisc?
Laserdisc. I think Pioneer released consumer players at the end of the 70s, so 78 or 79. I do have an original tube player, a top loader, but I bought that after the fact. My first player was around 84. It was the first laser-based or solid-state LED-based Laserdisc player.
And those episodes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead. No, I was just going to ask, in those episodes that you had bought on Laserdisc, did they have special features in them as well? Like.
So there were they're double-sided, right? One on each side. So there's only 40 discs. And I believe the cage was separate, and then later on, decade later or so, the cage they was pieced together in color. Different story. And then they finally released the real color one. Special stuff, previews. They had previews on there at the end of the episode.
Oh.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Analog, no digital as I recall. There was something for the audio though, CX compression or some sort of audio enhancement from the player. And I got myself an industrial deck, and that allowed me to hook it up to a computer and control the Laserdisc player. And then you could do that with the consumer decks too. The schools had them at the time, and you'd have a barcode and you'd scan it and it would control the player and it would go to a spot. But the industrial decks, they went from like one end of the disc to the other disc in a second or a quarter of a second, something ridiculously low. And you could access any frame. They had frame buffers. Wow, memory in there, so you could freeze the frame that a consumer deck couldn't. And controlling that's when you kind of we met, when I was getting into the Laserdisc computer control of Star Trek. Put a disc in, go exactly to where I want to go based on some search or text or something.
That's cool. So what happened next before you got into the Laserdisc, or after that? What happened after that? I mean, as far as your Star Trek journey was concerned.
Conventions. Got into that, and I'm talking about science fiction conventions, like where they would take over a hotel and lots of different things going on in the hotel rooms, not like a chain con from the 90s or something where there's just one big room and they have one thing going on, and then you go over to the huckster's room, which was just sell, so on the conventions, they weren't primarily set to Star Trek at first. They were just basically science fiction. There were a few. I remember I still have a t-shirt from the 70s, probably 76, Puget Sound Star Trekkers. There was some Star Trek 2, I'm pretty sure there were 2 Star Trek conventions that were Star Trek only in the 70s in my area, but most of the other ones, science fiction. Yeah, you'd go and you'd say, oh, they're showing the 16 millimeter version of Trouble with Tribbles, something like that. Ooh, gotta watch it on 16 millimeter because it was so vivid. Your TV there was no comparison. I mean, you'd go, wow. Yeah. So when was the first time in a convention that you saw one of the actual actors or actresses from Star Trek? Do you remember that at all? Yeah. Went to one and George Takei spoke briefly, and hey, clear out the aisle. The fire marshal's going to come in if you keep filling up the aisle. It's got to be free. And then George Takei came in, did a little spiel, very funny, and then later on autographs when you could actually walk by and get an autograph. Yeah. Now I know we hadn't talked about this before, but do you have pretty much everyone's autograph on a picture or not? Oh, in the early 90s, I went to these chain cons and I would go around and Shatner, of course, sold his for charity, his picture. Oh, nice. Yeah, and I bought a few. I probably have some signatures, but everybody has their little niche, right? What they collect or what they do. Signatures isn't the George Takei one was interesting. For me, I have to look this up. I had a film camera. I had a 8mm camera with me, not a Super 8. That was 2 things. An 8mm, and I held my camera. He's facing, signing, and I held the camera upside down over him signing, so that later on when I projected it, it would be looking like I was looking over his shoulder signing. Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Yeah. That's cool. Very inventive. Somewhere in the archives. That's cool. That's really cool. Pull that out. Yeah. And I asked him, how do you pronounce your name? And he said it to me. He said, just like okay. Takei. Takei. Like okay. So what else do we got? So you were in your conventions, Laserdiscs. Yeah, right. We met when we were working in aerospace. And that's where I kind of came into the Star Trek, because I really, as I had talked to you about earlier, wasn't really into Star Trek at all. I don't even know that I knew the world of Star Trek existed, to be honest with you. I was more like I said, more Rockford Files kind of guy, so into that world. But when I met you, the first thing I noticed, I had graduated, I met you first when I was still going to college. I was at Shoreline Community College, and then I went up to Western Washington University where I graduated. Then when I graduated, I was looking for a job, and I moved back down, and I actually moved into your home in Washington, down south. And I noticed that you had all these models that were still in the boxes. And I had asked you, do you build these? And you go, build them.
No, I don't build them. Now,
Exactly.
when you said that they lost value when you built them, I'm just going to throw this in here now because I think that's kind of funny. It's like they lost value because you built them so badly, or because you took them out of the box.
You took the plastic off of the box. You wouldn't want to do that. But I did have all those models. I had a whole bunch of different models, original AMT models from the 70s, and that's probably where you were seeing a Klingon vessel, Galileo, or bridge. My intention was to learn how to do modeling, which I never did, later in life, and I would buy enough of them to make 12 starships, Constitution class ships, so I could build the entire fleet, right? And I think I have 10 of those original ships. They're probably
That's pretty good. Now still in the box.
still in the box, so when I retire, maybe I'll open one. I did build one myself, but oh my gosh, it was, little water decals that you put in the water and you slid that.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Remember that?
Yeah. Which ones are those? Which one? Is that every model that comes with those stickers, or is that just?
No, those the ones I have, or that era. They did a lot of that. That's how you get stuff on models. I'm sure. I don't know anything about modeling. I'd like to learn to paint them well, but I think I need retirement and patience. Still working on that.
Your monocle.
3.
Yeah. So with me, then you have those 12-inch laser discs, and so I started watching them. And you had this really cool. You had the blackout on either side of the TV, because I think you were worried about the way that the TV, the black and it just the TV instead of being like we have it now. I think there's Overscan now, right? Or
right back then that we had tube TVs. And there was Overscan, so that when the voltage changed, the picture changed, brightness changed, the size changed, and when it was overscanned, you didn't see the edge moving in and out. But that was not good enough for me. I had to see the edge. I wanted to know when Nurse Chapel had one of those little scanners and set it onto the counter, and it was barely off screen. So I opened up my TV and made an umbilical to the outside for all the potentiometers so that I could tweak all of the geometry of that. And then because of that, I didn't want to see the frame of the TV. So I think what you're talking about, I built this big elaborate black velvet covered wall that had a hole cut out. So all is what you saw is this big, and it was inside the closet. I opened up the sliding closet door, and what you saw was a big black wall with just the tube visible. So it was more theater-like. We're talking
it really looked like a flat screen TV is what you made it look like back when there were still tubes. Yeah. So I want to just say for the viewers, because I think this is important, Bruce and I are both technically inclined. We're both trained technically, and we do technical work now. So Bruce was talking earlier, you were talking about analog versus digital, right? So an analog signal, we won't get into the technicality of it, but I don't even want to get, but if we say something that you guys don't understand and you want some explanation, just write a little note and we'll try to do the best we can without taking up a lot of video time trying to explain these things. But I do want to go back to the Laserdisc thing, because you did say it was an analog. I never knew that Laserdisc had an analog signal coming out of it.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of bandwidth to do that. So it took a lot of Laserdisc space to actually do it on an analog signal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the video was obviously in digital, right? They had digitized the video. No,
I don't know how that works. That's something we have to look up. Pulse width modulation for the lands on their dots and dashes, holes and lands to make work.
To emulate the analog.
Yeah, but digital. That's good.
So analog, I think, is a better signal for most people. That's why they like the vinyl records, is because it's an analog signal rather than DVD, which is a digital signal. So and then a compressed MP4, it drops out a lot of the signal, and they're saying it's what your ears can hear, but it's not exactly true. All of that we can talk about later, but I just wanted to cut, because I noticed that we're saying some technical stuff here as we go along.
We don't
And that's
know.
that's the only reason. That's the only reason I wanted to bring that up. So I started becoming fascinated because Bruce had his models that he didn't make, and I know that might sound funny, but it really fascinated me because it was what I got from that was you were thinking more long term, right? You weren't thinking about the immediacy of having a model, because anyone can go to the store and get a model, but you're having your models and you're saying, okay, this is going to be worth something in the future. You were on cutting edge as far as if the Laserdisc came out in the 70s, just think how long from the 70s. I didn't know that. But I came from a place that we weren't really, I came from New Mexico when I grew up, and we weren't really into technology that much. Where you were in Seattle, there was more technology push, I think, in Seattle area or in Washington than in New Mexico, where we were more. I was a rancher when I was growing up, so
still making dirt.
Still making dirt. Yeah, I still make dirt. But so you had the Laserdisc, and I don't know how many iterations of Star Trek you've bought over the years because it came out in beta, right? And then VHS.
I do have a few beta tapes. I think there were 5. I have 3 of them on beta, and then they came out on VHS. I got those and sold them. Oh, what a stupid decision. And then laser discs, and because of laser rot, the discs, the 2 halves are glued together, and when the glue broke down, you would get sparklies on the screen, right? Noise. So that was laser rot, and some companies had a big problem with that, and 3M discs were perfect, and as I recall, and Image Entertainment had a big issue in the beginning, and all of a sudden they did a turnaround that was unbelievable. So I bought, to cover my butt, I bought a second set.
Oh wow.
And I still have those.
Well, how do you preserve them? I mean, I've been in vaults where they do movie preservation now, and those things are pretty down deep in the ground, and they cost a hell of a lot to keep your movies and everything else in there. They're not cheap, and they're temperature controlled, so it's cold as hell. So how do you preserve your discs?
Or
you just
dry and cool. Stored vertically, but I use them. Some I've experienced laser rot on maybe 1 or 2 Star Trek discs. Fortunately, I have those replaced, and on some other ones, it's less than 1% for me.
So how many iterations of Star Trek the original series do you have?
A VHS sold, Laserdisc, a couple of copies. DVD, the first release in the, I don't know, 2000s. I should look this up. Then they were re-released. They were first released, I think, with 2 episodes per disc. Then there's even after several DVD releases. Some people are going to know what this was. The second one, I think, had better audio. They processed the audio again differently. Then HD, remember when there was the HD DVD and the Blu-ray wars? I have a set for HD and a player.
Oh wow.
And then Blu-ray. Boy, so I'm sure that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 iterations.
So if I ask you, let's just take it from and I know this wasn't part of what we originally, I'm deviating from what we were thinking, but that's okay. That's right, unless you want to bring it back to something that you've missed and you want to bring up to this.
No,
okay.
Keep going.
So my question is this: you have a lot of iterations of this. So you watch Star Trek. Let's say you watched episode 1. How many times? Or let's say Who Mourns for Adonais. How many times did you watch that?
So not much. I imagine that I haven't seen them more than, I have no idea, more than 20 times. I don't know.
20 times, right. So 20 times. So more than the average viewer, I'd say.
Yeah.
Right. And you've been
when I had them on Laserdisc, I had this big project where I was documenting things, getting statistics out of the episodes. So there was a lot of sitting there and remote control, frame by frame, viewing technical errors, visual technical errors, and writing these things down because that fascinated me, right? We wait for that at the end of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Read the credits. You wait for the credits, don't you? And actually read them, and then you would look at all the bloopers, right? Okay, so I did that with Star Trek, frame by frame. So
I remember you had pointed out to me once, and I don't know which one it was, where you can actually see the ceiling on the Enterprise in one of the episodes.
Yes, Galileo 7. Inside that set, you can see the wood. Lots of neat things, especially when you adjust the overscan on a tube TV so that you can actually see the edge, and then you can see that microphone or edge of the set or something. Yeah, really cool.
Right.
I like that kind of trivia.
That's cool. So that's kind of like my fascination. My fascination, actually, fascinating. We were talking about which Bruce word and which is mine. I think we're both fascinating, though. But I think Bruce was saying interesting. I was saying fascinating, right?
Logical. I think you said
logical. Bruce was
logically.
And I was fascinating. We go, well, those are both Spock words, right? Oh, man, now I forgot where I was going with this.
How you got involved?
So I really, what intrigues me about Star Trek is not so much the episodes themselves, but there are some episodes that I've watched. I've watched every episode, but there's some that are just so fascinating to me, and I always want to know who wrote it and what was the thinking behind the writing of the episodes. As Bruce and I had talked, I'm not a big fan of time travel because I find you're at the end of the episode, you're back where you started, But what we're going to do is we're going to get into each episode. We're going to look at, Bruce and I are going to review the episodes, talk about key points that we think are interesting, give you some background on what the episodes have, what Bruce finds very interesting about the episodes, anything that Bruce picked up, maybe some little trivia like, yeah, you can see the top of the Enterprise on here.
I can't wait to hear the opposite, what you think is interesting about this stuff, because you're coming in from the outside. It's not like you're a hardcore Trekkie. I would consider myself a Trekkie. I mean, Star Trek for so many years, doing lots of cool stuff with it. And you come in and you go, that's an interesting show. And I'm just dying to hear when you watch a show and when we're talking about it, what was interesting to you, because you're gonna have a completely different perspective than all of my friends that Trek, right?
Yeah. Well, here's one thing I'm gonna say right now, because you brought it up. And I know I'm going to step on some people's toes, but Bruce said I'm a hardcore Trekkie. And I heard a lady say one time, and not long ago, I'm not a Trekkie, I'm a Trekkor. And I just about bust a gut, not laughing out loud, but just thinking, oh man, this is the funniest thing I've ever heard, because she's like, a Trekkie is someone that does, I guess they're like a groupie on a band, for a band. Whereas she's kind of more, I don't know, refined. I don't know what the difference is.
Yes. So I think people have that perception, but I don't have a problem with it. Trekkie was the original word that people threw at people who liked it, right? More fan, right? Fanboy more or something. But I don't have a problem with Trekkie. I think Trekker, the way I learned it, the other one, Trekker, doesn't roll off the tongue.
It doesn't. It doesn't roll off the tongue. Plus, I think it's just someone trying to be politically correct, right? Like, oh, well, I'm this or I'm not that. And I just find it fascinating and funny. And I'm not going to say pointless, but I want to hear what the people want to say about this, because I think it's a really interesting
Trekkie or Trekker, yeah.
It's fascinating to me that someone would say, oh, I'm not a Trekkie, I'm a Trekkor. It just cracks me up, because why differentiate yourself? Why try to pull yourself out of a group of people that actually enjoy and are put themselves in the Trek world, and which is a big world. That's why I'm so fascinated, because I find this Star Trek world is so huge. I was just watching something where they're in Australia or somewhere, and they've made it, and they probably have them in Japan. I don't know. All these fan things that are coming out or have come out over the years, and we had talked about this already, you and I, the continuing voyages, or and Star Trek 2 or whatever they call them.
Phase 2.
All the fan stuff, which some are very well done. Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm coming from, yes, the outside. I'm looking at this now. How far outside I am, I don't know. How close I am, I don't know. I know that I've watched every episode of Star Trek.
Will we let you inside the club?
Will you let me in? Can I join the group? Can I start? Because I would like, if I was going to be in, I'd be a Trekkie. I would start out where I'm at now. Then I would go Trekor because I think they're more on the outs. Then I would be a Trekkie because that's pretty hardcore. But I want to thank you for welcoming me and bringing me into the world of Star Trek. And I love the stories behind Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry, we're going to talk about Gene Roddenberry. I know as we go along, we're going to talk about the two Genes, right? Is it the two Genes? Am I right or wrong? The ones that wrote that book.
Yeah. What's there? Gene, what? Yeah.
Gene Coons and Gene. Yeah.
Gene Hackman.
And Gene Hackman. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to take we're going to start on air date. We're going to start with episode 1. Our next broadcast or our next YouTube video is going to be on episode 1. Bruce is going to give his input. I'm going to give my input. Some of the episodes, and feel free to just let us know what you think and, what you would like to see us cover as we go along, because I think that'd be very helpful too, and give Bruce and I an outside perspective, another perspective than what we had originally, and maybe this will develop into something really, which I think is going to be cool anyway, but with the input of the viewers, something much more cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what could we say? You were saying something about having, was it like something from Star Trek that we could say during each episode of this? Some sort of trivia or something?
Right. Each episode should have some sort of favorite quote, right? We should have some trivia in each one, right?
So give us a favorite quote, Bruce, and we'll close with that.
Man trap. I joke always and quote lines from the part where Professor Crater, "Where's your wife, Professor?" "Oh, up on the hill." Wait, have you seen the episode? You've seen them all, right?
I've seen them all. I don't remember all of them, but as we go along, I will watch them again before we get into each of these videos.
Your wife, Professor. Where's your wife? Can I do this? The thing becomes wife, lover, best friend, wise man, fool, idle, slave.
So that's part of that episode.
Yes. Where is she now? Dead. Buried up on the hill. It killed her. When? Oh, a year. Or was it 2?
Cool. Well, thank you guys for watching. Bruce and I will be back. We'll be back in about, I think we're going to do these weekly, so we'll be back in about a week. We'll cover episode 1. And interested in hearing what you guys think. I know we're not going to have a big following right away, but I imagine as we get traction, we'll have more and more input.
As we learn and get better and make them laugh.
And when you guys figure out what Yast is, let us know. Thank you guys for watching.